Alright, this might be a unique approach to studying for the Security Plus exam by CompTIA. Basically, I'm going to go over what I think are the trickiest objectives, and I'm simply going to read them and then try to ask questions, which I will then use to Google and read about through blogs or however I can answer these questions that I just think about on my own here based only on the objective. This is a strategy I used for testing in college. You know the classic professor move when they just hand you what topics might be on the final? Well, I would look at those topics and then try to guess at what questions could be asked. So here we go. The first standard, which is 1.1. Given a scenario, analyze indicators of compromise and determine the type of malware. So that's kind of a two-parter there. Maybe a question is, how do you know when your system is compromised? What is an indicator, right? Maybe what evidence of intrusion can you look for in a compromised system? And then the second part of that objective, determine the type of malware. So maybe this feels a little silly, but I'm going to go with it. Is there a go-to formula to determine what type of malware is infecting your system? I won't go through each of these, suggested terms here. Each one would have their own separate video. You could go pretty in-depth with it. We just want to create a list of questions, I think, to use as a study material. All right, so next tricky one, 1.2. You see soon it'll be skipping when I get to 1.5. So 1.2 says compare and contrast types of attacks. And this is a huge list, isn't it? I'm going to scan it for any terms I'm unfamiliar with. These two I know I need more help with, cross-site scripting and CSRF. And since it says compare and contrast, that's rough. People taking the Security Plus test would need to compare and contrast any of these two things. Oh, this one, definitely. What is driver manipulation, shimming, and refactoring? So what is driver manipulation attack, since these are all types of attacks? I made a whole video on IP spoofing, so I feel good about that one. Initialization vector, I think that's what IV stands for. And I feel like that's more of an approach to an attack. Yeah, there you go. So just type in IV attacks and you'll read about or watch about initialization vector attacks. And the rest of these are pretty straightforward. I forgot the birthday one. I remember reading about it, but I think that has to do with the percentages of people with the same birthday in a room. The more people there are, the higher the chances that two people have the same birthday on the same date, something like that. I forgot how that relates to attacking. And I'll finish this objective off with how common are collision attacks, because I feel like they are not that common. Okay, so let's jump down to 1.5 here. Explain vulnerability scanning concepts. This is a rough question, but it helps me remember what a passive scan is. But what is the average time of a typical passive scan? Because that's one where you're kind of sitting and waiting for the system, the people, the computers to do something for you to see. And thus it's called passive. You're not doing anything to instigate or initiate them, but once they get going, you're looking for vulnerabilities. I need a specific example for that. So that'd be a good one to Google. I hope to find maybe some message board talk about it. So what is a specific example of a passive scan? Oh, rating identify common misconfigurations makes me ask, what is a common misconfiguration? What's Google going to say about that? The next one is, what's the difference between intrusive and non-intrusive scans? When would a credentialed scan happen? And my last one for this objective, are non-credentialed scans common? Also, are they illegal? Can you just start scanning any website you want or any network you want? Alright, so the next objective, explain the impact associated with types of vulnerabilities. I'm going to skip it. 2.1, install and configure network components, both hardware and software based, to support organizational security. So, I think the more YouTube videos you watch on configuring network components, the better off you are. I suggest Lawrence Systems videos for that. But as you can see, there's a lot to that particular objective. But here we are with the one we want. Given a scenario, use appropriate software tools to access the security posture of an organization. So what's this word posture really mean? Like how that organization stands? As in, are they like standing tough? Do they look like weak? They have poor posture? Looking at the key terms, we got protocol analyzers. I feel great about that. I have a video called Hacking Hardware. or something about hardware hacks to watch to maybe help you really internalize what a protocol analyzer does. Network mapping, if you know Nmap, the more you know about Nmap, the better. Oh, here you should know about scanners. You should know about password crackers. I know a few examples from the IPSec videos. I suggest you watch him as well. I think Nmap is a type of vulnerability scanner, so definitely learn everything you can about Nmap. But what is this? A configuration compliance scanner? Are those expensive? How do those work? I'll need to learn more about that. Oh, banner grabbing. Simply, how does banner grabbing work? I'm going to post these questions in the description, and then we can compare what our answers are in the comments. Here's your command line tools you should know really well, and that's the end of that, so that's pretty good. The thing about these tests that confuse me is like, take passwords cracker, for example. Like, when are you appropriately supposed to use that? It all depends on your role in the company, right? When you take the test, what kind of role are you supposed to be like imagining yourself in? Are you a regular sysadmin who needs to be very aware of network security? Or are you an actual like pen tester? I know they have the pen test plus test, but I'm not sure your typical sysadmin's going around using password crackers. And that makes me think of one more question. What are the best password crackers? Usually I like to put pictures in my videos or pictures in my notes. I make videos based on my notes, so there's our first picture. 2.3. Given a scenario, troubleshoot common security issues. An issue could be unencrypted credentials, clear text stuff. Troubleshoot logs and event anomalies. Troubleshoot permission issues, access violations, certificate issues, data exfiltration, misconfiguration devices such as firewall, content filters, access points, etc. Troubleshoot weak security configurations, and then personal issues like a policy violation or an insider threat, social engineering, social media, personal email. I guess the existence of unauthorized software, any deviation from a baseline measurement. I'm having a hard time coming up with questions for this section. What do you guys think? How about what is the most common security issue? How about what type of certificate issues give professionals the most problems? I think these types of questions will help people connect personally with answers. That'll help them on the test. All right, moving on to 2.4. Given a scenario, analyze and interpret output from security technologies. So you can have outputs from all these different types. Looks like software types, but some of it can be at the hardware level. Always know your acronyms, I say. So what is UTM and DLP? And then how about give me an example of a file integrity check. Okay, moving on to 3.1, but we'll be skipping given a scenario, deploy mobile device security. We have these different connection methods. SATCOM looks like the coolest one. Oh my gosh, I have no idea what ANT is. Dang, I didn't want to do 2.5, only 2.4, but I have to figure out what ANT is. I'm going to skip the rest of these just so I can focus. 2.6 says protocols, all right, know your security protocols. Going down to 3.0, this is explain use cases and purposes for frameworks. That includes best practices and secure configuration guides. So a lot of fun compliance stuff there, it looks like. Now the standard that I determined is tricky. Given a scenario, implement secure network architecture concepts. So we're talking zones and topologies, DMZ, extra, intranets, wireless, guest, honeynets, NAT, ad hoc, segregation, segmentation, isolation. So we could be talking about physical networks, VLANs, the concept of virtualization, air gaps. When should you air gap a computer? Oh no, I skipped 3.1. Sorry, guys. All right, let's finish 3.2 and then we'll go back to 3.1. So look at that, 3.1 was tricky. Anyways, we're looking at VPNs down here, security device technology placement, as in sensors and collectors, correlation engines, never heard of that before. So where should security devices be placed? What is a correlation engine? How does a VPN concentrator work? And what's an SSL accelerator? Anytime you accelerate the speed or convenience, you usually take away from security, so that could be a bad thing. Load balancers, DDoS mitigator, aggregation switches, taps, and mirror port. And then they just throw an SDN there, as in software-defined networking. That feels so random. Well, Let's ask a question about it. How does SDN relate to security? Maybe I could Google the word SDN next to the word security and see what I come up with. 3.1. Explain use cases and purpose for frameworks, best practices, and secure configuration guides. So based on those first few keywords, what regulatory frameworks must industry follow? And then there's some industry-specific frameworks, but I'll just leave this very general question and see what I can find. Now, when it comes to benchmarks and secure configuration guides, what are some examples of a secure configuration guide? And they're talking about like configuring a web server with certain security configurations. That makes sense. Maybe closing certain ports. There's operating system configuration. I mean, I know you should update operating systems to have the best security. All right, and then down here there are some general purpose guides. So I ask, why would a company need a general purpose guide? Do they develop these themselves? And the last one should be about defense in depth, layered security. So we got vendor diversity, control diversity, so you could have administrative control, technical control. I wonder if that means like automation, even though it's the administrators who might be running certain automations. And then my favorite, user training. So I ask, how does vendor diversity relate to defense in depth? Because I feel pretty good about these other ones. That's the one that's kind of sticking out to me. Well, now we can go down to 3.3. Given a scenario, implement secure systems design. So we're talking hardware, firmware security with FDE, SED. I kind of feel like SED is not the Linux program SED. Maybe it's something else. How about I just write that? How does FDE, SED relate to hardware? TPM I know about. It's, I think, Trusted Platform Module, something like that. It's like built into the chip. HSM, not sure about that one, so let's add a comma. UEFI BIOS, know about that. Secure boot. And attestation. Just don't know what attestation is. Supply chain security is awesome. You can learn a lot about that listening to different podcasts. Of course, you should disable default account passwords. But other ones here are less obvious, maybe like the wireless keyboards. It was interesting to find out you could buy a fancy Bluetooth keyboard that encrypts your keystrokes as you send it to your computer. That was fancy. And then there's some new security around digital cameras because of our whole deep fakes problem. But I imagine that is not something that'd pop up on this particular 501 Security Plus test. So, you know what? I have gone over quite a few of these as examples. I'm going to go ahead and keep banging away by myself on this. Like I said, I'll go ahead and post it in the description. And now that I've given you guys this strategy, you can just use it on your own as well. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helps you succeed.